Live from the airwaves of Sports Radio New York at WGBB, it is New York Baseball Live with Joe Boesch.
What's up, folks? Welcome to another great edition of New York Baseball Live. I am Joe Boesch, your host, coming to you from beautiful Long Island, New York. A great show lined up for you tonight. We're going to kick off with Douglas J. Gladstone, author of A Bitter Cup of Coffee, How MLB and the Players Association Drew 874 Retirees a Curve, and he'll be on with former MLB player and member of the MLB Players Alumni Association Subcommittee on Pensions, Gary Neibauer. Doug and Gary, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Thank you much. Nice day in Denver. Hope it sounds like it's a nice day in New York, huh?
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was even beautiful yesterday when the Mets played for 20 innings.
You know, you were talking about the Mets. I saw the Mets-Rockies game Tuesday night. He didn't look too good.
No, it did not.
That's okay, Gary. Remember, you guys just threw a no-hitter, and it's going to be, another 15 years before you have another no-hitter. But remember, the Mets have a...
Better be lucky than good, and he did a good job yesterday.
A no-hitter.
I think we're getting off to a good start.
Unbelievable.
Doug, welcome to the show also, and I appreciate you guys coming on.
No, Joe, thank you very kindly for having us on. We appreciate the opportunity to talk about the book and to talk about the issues the book raises.
All right, so let's get right into the book. A Bitter Cup of Coffee, How MLB and the Players Association Drew 874 Retirees a Curve.
The title, isn't it?
I love the title. Actually, as I drink my cup of coffee here. Doug, what made you research the book? What made you write about this topic?
I was coming off having done a story for the Chicago Sun-Times about the late Larry Gelbart and the famous Adam's Rib episode of MASH. So my wife turned to me one day and she said, well, what are you going to do for an encore? And I'm a hardcore baseball fan, as I'm sure many of your listeners are. And I said, well, and this is last May or June of 2009. I said, well, this year's the 40th anniversary of the imperfect game, and to any baseball fan, and particularly a Mets fan, the imperfect game, of course, is July 9th, 1969, when Tom Seaver carried a perfect game into the ninth inning. He got Randy Hundley on a comebacker to the mound, and then a little-known rookie, a reconverted shortstop-turned outfielder named Jimmy Qualls came up to the plate line to clean single between the late, God rest his soul, Tommy Agee and Cleon Jones, and the perfect game was spoiled, and it was all broken up. And last year was the 40th anniversary of that great game. The Mets did win the game 4-0 on that one hit shutout by Seaver. And I got to thinking, well, Seaver now, it's 40 years later, he's a very successful businessman, has, I think, 110 acres of a vineyard out in Calistoga, California. Jimmy Qualls hasn't been as fortunate. Through the research that I did, he was having a tough time just making ends meet and paying for health insurance. So I started doing this story, and Tom Seaver, by the way, wanted nothing to do with it. Through Jay Horowitz, the Mets media relations vice president, Seaver refused to talk about that night. Jimmy Qualls was only too happy to talk about that evening, and it was a great conversation. We had about 2 or 3 of them. Towards the end of our final conversation, he very innocuously, very innocently, very casually just said, Mr. Gladstone, I had a good career. I wish I had played a little longer, and the only thing I regret is I'm not getting a pension. And in the interest of full disclosure, I should tell you and your listeners that I during the day, I happen to work for the New York State retirement system, so I know a little bit about vesting and what it takes to get a pension. And I said, well, Jimmy, just looking over your career numbers, it doesn't appear that you had the 4 years necessary to get a pension. And for the benefit of your readers who don't, or listeners rather, who don't know, 1947, the pension fund came into existence. You needed 5 years at that time through 1968 and 1969. That number was lowered to 4 years. And then in 1980, it was lowered to what it is now. One game for health insurance and 43 games, basically a quarter of one season for your pension. And I don't know if a lot of people know that, and I certainly didn't. And I said, well, what are you telling me? The MLB and the union never retroactively amended the vesting requirement? He said, yeah, that's what I'm telling you. And I just thought this was an outrage. It was a travesty. I mean, Major League Baseball is a $6.3 billion industry. Its players, and Gary will bear this out, its players average about $3.27 million a year. They're not lacking for money, and I just couldn't fathom why in the world, the union and the league wouldn't do right by these players who, let's face it, paved the path for their salaries now. I'm sure you're aware of the fact that very recently the head of the Players Association, Michael Weiner, has charged collusion. He's thinking of filing a grievance against the league for last year's free agent crop of ball players. People like Jason Bay, who commanded 4 years and $65 million from the Mets, and Matt Halliday, 7 years and $105 million from the Cardinals, and he's crying foul. And people like Gary and David Clyde and Ken Wright, and I guess the most famous one of the class, Gary, I'm not trying to besmirch your reputation.
No problem.
Pat Darcy, the fellow who gave up Carlton Fisk's game-winning home run in the 1975 World Series. These guys can't get a little bit of money.
Wow.
So that, in long and the short of it, is why I wrote the book.
Okay. So, Gary, you're on the MLB Players Alumni Association subcommittee on pensions.
Correct.
As a former player, what obviously, you played from '69 to '73 with the Braves and the Phillies. What are you trying to do to change, or like oversee? I mean, we have, like, Doug was saying, you got players that are making millions and they're set. Then you have other players that are on hard times and aren't making it. You as, you're a former player, you care about the game just from, reading about it. What are you trying to change or oversee?
Joe, the thing is that we have tried for over 25 years to get this situation rectified and really haven't been able to do so. We've been placated by MLB, by the union.
Yeah.
I can't even begin to tell you how many players have written letters to Bud Selig, to Rob Manfred, to Don Fear when he was there, to Michael Weiner. And it seemed like that we would maybe get a letter back once in a while stating, we understand your situation. However, because you are deemed inactive, non-vested players, we really don't have to represent you and probably won't represent you. It just seemed strange to us that we were, a lot of us, of the 874, we were on the front lines in 1969 when Marvin Miller was the head of the union, and such tremendous strides was made for the ball players that all of a sudden now, I know Selig likes to talk about the baseball family, and it's just like we have leprosy. I like to call, and I told Doug this, I said I like to call us the forgotten boys of summer. They just won't do anything. They're not legally obligated to do anything, and therefore they won't. Now, granted, I think that, as Doug found out about this situation, my guess is, Joe, that if you went to the average fan on the street, I would venture a guess that not even 1 out of 100 would know that this pension situation even exists, and I'd also venture a guess that probably 3/4 of the current players don't even know this situation exists. Right now, and Doug is correct, I think for 2010, the average major league salary is $3.27 million. The